And I will officially start the Count Township zoning ordinance update first meeting, and I will hand it off to Nancy.
I know, we
I
never
know.
did this.
Okay.
To look at Nancy, I gotta go like this. That's what I'm used to, right? Just a little box.
Right.
Nancy, I have one word for you before we start. Tillamook.
Okay. So, good evening, everybody. Good to be back in Cowan Township after a couple of years. Thank you for inviting me back to help you with this project. I'm excited to be here. So on tonight's agenda, we have 6 items, I believe. Yeah, 6 items. Some will go rather quickly. Others we can delve into a little bit more tonight. But for tonight, I just wanted to provide basically an overview of the project and where we are heading with this so that we're all starting out at the same baseline. And off on the same footing. So we'll start with introductions, and then and then the county, Chris from Chester County, will give an overview of the Vision Partnership Program. He'll go through the checklist of all of the program guidelines. As you know, this project is being partially funded by a Vision Partnership Program grant from Chester County. And then I'll give an overview of the project. We'll go through the project timeline real quickly, the logistics, and then a discussion of the status of the updates and where we are now with those updates. And might as well do this now.
Nancy,
Yes.
we just had a comment up there that your voice is coming in and out on the microphone.
Yes,
Maybe
speak
just
closer.
bring it a little closer to you.
Yeah.
And then confirming the date of the next meeting, so March 21st. So, I guess I can begin with introductions. So, my name is Nancy Sarcinello. I'm the owner and principal of Sarcinello Planning and GIS Services. I'm a municipal planner. I have been doing this for 25 years now, which I cannot believe. Time flies when you're having fun doing planning and zoning work. Believe it or not, I do enjoy this work. Al's giving me a funny look. Most of my work is in Pennsylvania, in southeastern PA, and also up in northeastern PA in the Pocono area. And then some projects out toward the middle of the state, primarily doing comprehensive planning, zoning, and subdivision ordinances. And then I also do the GIS mapping and analysis. Do you all want to do introductions, or do you not feel
Oh,
the need?
I think it's best if we all say our name and our
Okay.
positions, so we know. Josh, if you want to start off.
I'm Josh Young, Commissioner for Cowan Township.
Mark Evans, Commissioner for Cowan Township.
Paul Mullen, Cowan Township Commissioner.
Jane Kennedy, Cowan Township Commissioner.
Lorraine Tindaro, Cowan Township Commissioner, retired.
That was Adam Thomas,
Adam
Planning
Thomas.
Commission, since he has no microphone.
Don Beamazall, Township Manager.
Chris?
Chris Matriarch with the Chester County Planning Commission.
Al, part of this?
Al DiMatti, retired business owner, Cowan Township.
Kristen Camp, Cowan Township Solicitor.
You're just a resident? Yeah. That's all right. Yeah,
He's-
we have two residents here in the township building, and we do have a couple faces on Zoom here. I know Noelle Bernard. Can she
Mark
unmute?
DeYoung.
Noel. So, what, I need to unmute Noel? Oh, so I'm actually hosting. Okay.
Oh,
I gotcha. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Noel Bernard, resident.
thanks for coming, Noelle. Was there anyone else on there that was part of the team? I know we have a couple residents there
It's
as well.
Mark DeYoung.
No, no, he's not on the task force. He's just here to,
Observe.
okay.
Happy birthday, Mark.
Was it his birthday?
Yeah, I think so. Saw
Oh.
something pop up saying that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll turn it over now to Chris Patriarcho from Chester County to go through the Vision Partnership checklist.
All right, thank you. I'm substitute Mark Gallant. You probably won't see me again. Mark is enjoying a birthday week off, so he'll be back in person next month. So we'll fill in as best I can. You guys have been through all this before. This is Vision Partnership grant reimbursed project. When the end of this, ideally consistent with Landscapes 3, it'll come back to us, close it out. So really just a couple things that want to make clear on the front end of this as part of this from the county's perspective. The first is all the materials that are reviewed, and I know Nancy is coordinating with Mark, but everything needs to flow through him to make sure that really the biggest function that we have at the county is basically calling balls and strikes with the scope of work, which Nancy will be going through as part of the agenda later, going through the project timeline and the overview and the logistics. So that's really the primary function of what Mark will be doing. If things start creeping away from what's in that scope, I mean, this is great that the commissioners are leading this process, because you guys are the decision makers ultimately, and if you start going down another path, it's ultimately the commissioner's decision. But anything that substantially deviates from that scope, depending on what it is, working with Mark, talking with our supervisor, may require some formality in amending the overall scope. But ultimately, that's what we're going to be looking at. The final product, there's really only one thing it needs to be from our perspective, the county, is consistent with Landscapes 3, our countywide comprehensive plan, and the way that it's written, and based on honestly the scope and what CALN seeks to do through this process. I mean, it's not going to be an issue. CALN we see as a very critical, important partner in implementing visions within Landscapes 3, given your strategic location between the city of Coatesville, Borough Downingtown, being a suburban center with lots. You guys got everything here, so this will be a very interesting process to see from the other side. So with that, like I said, I'm basically just be observing, reporting back to Mark. But if there's any assistance I can be with or any questions I can answer, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, next on the agenda is a project overview, followed by project timeline and project logistics. The project timeline and logistics are real short segments of tonight's agenda. Let me scroll down here to the project overview. And what I'd like to do is just run through these points here in the project overview, give them a once over before we get into the weeds on any of this. Then we'll hit the project timeline and logistics. And if we then want to, we can come back to this part and start digging in a little bit more, okay? So the project basically involves an update to the ordinance, as you know. I just drew this line on on tonight's agenda item to pull this existing zoning districts down under this Article 5. So let's start out with Article 1 is general provisions. So this amendments to the general provisions, Article 1 section, will not be all that involved. These are the community development objectives, and so once we get the zoning districts set, then we'll come back to Article 1. So Article 1 and in fact Article 2 will probably be a couple of the last things that we do in this project. After we get all the zoning districts together, then we'll come back and update those sections, the general provisions and Article 2, the definitions. One thing we also should do as far as the definitions go is to make sure that any definitions that we change in the zoning are consistent with the definitions in the subdivision and land development ordinance. So there probably will be a little bit of work at least on the subdivision and land development ordinance too. And there may even be more that we need to cross-check with the Saldo. Article 3 discusses the zoning map and then designation of zoning districts. So in Article 3 there is text of the ordinance that describes the zoning map and processes for changes to the zoning map, but we will actually be changing the zoning map throughout this process too. And so I think off the bat, some of the changes that we know or at least think that we're going to be making to the zoning map at this point would be to add the Thorndale Village or amend the Thorndale Village district, add the Lincoln Highway East and Lincoln Highway West districts, delineate a new commercial, I think you're calling it commercial recreation and entertainment district, and then there's a rail transportation corridor district, which I think is going to carry over from the previous effort. Under Article 4, that is the article that describes the various zoning districts and outlines the uses and the area and bulk regulations for the different districts. So let me scroll back up to the top here where I had this first bullet. So the existing zoning districts, as I understand it now, and this might change, but as I understand it now, the existing districts, as they are adopted in your ordinance, the R1 through the R5, the commercial districts, the industrial districts, and the institutional district will remain as they are. And then, let me scroll back down. Under Article 4, there will be some amendments though to include those proposed new districts: Thorndale Village, Lincoln Highway East and West, commercial entertainment, and the railroad district. And then lastly, under the zoning districts, possible changes would be to evaluate the zoning of the remaining large undeveloped tracts. In the previous effort, previous zoning effort, we referred to them as residential growth areas. So we'll take another look at them and see how the township wants to address those tracts. Article 5 it's currently called the Conservation Overlay District. In the previous effort, we called them the Resource Protection Standards. And the idea here was to take your natural resource protection standards and as of a couple of years ago, there was a historic resource ordinance that was in the works. And as I understand it, that ordinance is ready to be folded into this.
I should just comment, we did the last update to the R8 with SHPO, and Mark Gallant has it, and I believe he had Janine Spears looking at it, but I think she's waiting for him to give her the go-ahead again to look at it again. But yeah, we worked on that. It's great.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll fold that into the resource protection standards. So that article will have your natural and historic resource protection standards all in one place in the ordinance. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I can go around, but that's all the other commissioners were here working on that. We went through it page by page. I think they have it, but I'll send it out again. Yeah, everyone had it because we all sat.
We did it at regular board meetings.
Oh, okay.
We
Yeah,
went
yeah,
through
yeah.
it.
No, that wasn't.
So,
Okay.
This was independent from the
Yeah.
task force and the zoning. It was a standalone ordinance that you guys were looking at.
yeah.
I remember because it was like, should we be 100 feet or 200 feet from a
Yeah.
historic structure?
we
And
definitely
we
went
went back and forth on that
Yeah.
long time.
And I can send it to whoever. I don't know if you have it.
I
Yeah.
do not have
Okay.
it, so yeah.
So why don't we cross-reference Mark to make
Like
sure we're looking at
Article
the same
6.
version?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, just.
It's been a while. But...
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
yeah.
And real quick, I don't know if you guys remember, I had prepared this. This is a paper copy, but we emailed this. So if you bring this, and I can make another one. I should have. This is what I was trying to find to give you. This is sort of
What I
along
think I
where
had.
you're going. This
Binder.
was my binder. Remember I told you.
Yeah.
But we had emailed this, and so
Would
some of
that
the stuff
serve?
she's talking about, you know,
Paul.
Article 1, for example, might be helpful to have the actual
The
section. I don't know.
historic,
Anyway,
the historic resource protection standards, Article 6. That's what I had.
Yeah, the only difference is with the most recent update is that the state, if you want to become what kind of a township do we want to become? No, my mind just went. I'm having one of those brain. It's not working today. In order to certify local government, which opens you up to all kinds of funding, you can't have a breakdown by classification of your resources. They have to just be identified. We did, but I don't think that these guys saw that one yet with the classifications out. Oh, all right.
Oh, yeah, let's get us up to speed.
Get the latest
Okay.
one. Yeah.
Classification.
All
historic
right.
resource map.
Okay, Article 6 was special overlay districts. Yeah,
Mhm.
sure.
Yes.
All right, so you
And-
do have
Yeah,
it.
that's what I have
I
here.
do not have
Yep.
it. I
It-
don't
it's
think
Article,
I have it.
Article
but-
6. That's what I have.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, yes.
Yeah, if you could do that, then I can flag it.
I
Yeah.
need one.
Because Al, Noel, and a few others that.
They weren't
weren't in
involved.
attendance This evening, they're not caught up with that. Okay.
Can I get an extra copy, please? Thank you. Thank you.
And Nancy, some of when in between the two times, we were talking about getting rid of a lot of the overlays and just putting the information into the existing zoning district so we don't have 32 different overlays and people are trying to figure out what to do where and you know
Right.
how that works.
Yeah.
And we
I
talked
do
about
have-
that
yeah,
when-
I do have some questions for you too, as to, which we'll get to. What do you want to do with this? What would you like to do with it? So, we'll get into them.
but Josh, real quick, just because I want to make sure I'm clear on this. I mean, the overlays that she was just talking about are natural resource protection overlays. So steep slope conservation district, hydric soil district. So that's not talking about.
I was
you,
thinking
you were
that
thinking more Lincoln Highway and
Yeah,
Route 30
The
business.
natural
Yeah,
resources would no longer be an overlay, they would just be flat out protection standards. The overlays that you have now, well, let's talk about them. So Article 6, special overlay districts. Again, as far as I understand, that the task here is to take so you have an existing Lincoln Highway overlay, and there are standards in the ordinance. From what I've seen from what Kristen sent me, just earlier this week, you have at least a draft of design guidelines that you've written for Lincoln Highway, and so the Lincoln Highway will now become Lincoln Highway East and West flat out zoning district, outright zoning districts, and we'll take these overlay standards and move them into the actual districts.
Right, that way people didn't have to go to two different locations in the zoning to figure out how they can build and what like some of the zoning Lincoln Highway zoning overlay allowed the Board of Commissioners leeway to grant relief and stuff without having to go to the zoning hearing board. But if you just open the regular zoning district and you're not familiar that we have an overlay, you're like, oh well, we can't build there, and they just close the book. So that's what we're trying to is get the design standard into the actual zoning district so that when you open it up, you can see right there in plain text what you need to do and what kind of relief we can offer.
Okay.
And the last we were talking about putting the design guidelines in Saldo, not in the.
That way, if we wanted to grant relief, we could.
Right.
Yes.
If it's in the Saldo, then you can grant relief on those standards. And in the zoning, we could put a reference to the Saldo design standards. So if somebody opens the zoning book and there's a reference to the design standards that are in the Saldo, they can refer to that and see what those standards are. Sorry.
Got to get used to it. Yeah.
Yeah, trouble here.
Yeah.
Oh, she.
Oh, okay. Put one
Yeah, put a closer.
All right. Yeah. That's helpful. All right. So now I'm mic'd up on both sides.
I think she has a very quiet voice, unlike myself. Talk loud, Nancy.
All right. I feel
That
like
was
I'm
good.
yelling.
You're
I'm
very
not yelling.
quiet. You're
Okay.
very quiet.
All right.
The difference between the lawyer and the planner.
All right. I will try to speak up. Okay. So that's
Noel
the
says
Lincoln
yay.
Highway East and West.
Mhm.
And then the Route 30. So you also have a Route 30 bypass interchange overlay. So
I don't
my
think we
understand-
decided what we were going to do with that. I think we sort of didn't really get to it. So,
all right.
as far as I know, nobody really uses it. Like nobody's really taken advantage of it in terms of the uses. I don't believe. So-
Did we add things for Royal Farms into that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I honestly I can't recall any applications where those provisions were used. So
Yeah, because it had to be already in the existing C2, right?
mhm.
Or I think it was C2. So
Uh, see, I'm pulling up the zoning map here. I believe we'd have to look at the text, but I believe it was at the intersection of or around the interchange.
it's all three.
It's written as a certain radius from the
Right.
interchange.
From
I
the
think.
interchange.
Yeah.
It's all
from the-
three. It's 322 and
Right.
30,
Right.
30 and 340 and 30 in Fisherville Road.
Right. Yeah. So we'll look at that and decide if it stays or goes. And then the historic resource protection, that was a special overlay district, or is currently in the currently adopted ordinance. It applies to the northern portion of the township north of Route 30. But as I stated earlier, that would be moved up under the resource protection standards. And so what we're doing is basically moving items out of this special overlay district
Yes.
into other parts of the ordinance so that we can eliminate some of these articles too and try to streamline the ordinance a bit. The supplementary regulations, I have this listed as Article 7. This is listed as Article 7 in the I don't want to call it the Ray Ott draft. It's the 2022 draft. But in your current ordinance, this is Article 9. The supplementary regulations are currently in Article 9. And let me,
If I can just jump in real quick. That was one of the things that Ray and I worked on, sort of separate, not separate, but in parallel with the task force. So we spent a lot of time looking at mainly because of Ray's knowledge of applications coming in and issues and problems in interpretation, ambiguous language, maybe duplicative language. So what this binder here, and again, Nancy, I'm sorry to get this to you, but we pretty much went through your existing, as you said, it's existing Article 9, right? But in this 2022 version, we moved it to Article 6, but we didn't change. I mean, we just went through what you have. We felt it was needed to be carried over. So that, I think you're in good shape.
yeah, so I think that would be carried over, the supplementary regulations. What the actual article number ends up being, we will see. But that's a minor detail at this point.
And these are the ones that are really, really sort of nitty gritty. That as people come in with very, applications for putting fences in or sheds in and this and that. I mean, these are things that Ray getting these applications in and looking at them and having to apply this language. He had some really good suggestions for where people got hung up. And it's, to me, when you have an ordinance, if you had an application where you're applying it, it just is so much easier to understand what worked with the language and what didn't work with the language. So that's really the genesis of why some of these sections were changed.
Right. And I think, do I have those changes? Did you send them to me?
I tried to,
Okay.
but I'll make
all
sure.
right.
Yeah, I'll try to send
Okay.
this. Yeah,
All right.
and I not just to I'll send this to everybody on the task force,
All right.
and I guess Mark as well, right? Because he would want that. Okay. Which I think we did send this to the county, but I'll just make sure.
Okay. Next are the specific use regulations. Someone's in the waiting room. I just let Cheryl in. Okay. Specific use regulations, again, incorporate the recent edits. So specific use regulations in your currently adopted ordinance. This is Article 7, which provides standards for different types of residential uses. And then Article 8 provides standards for different types of non-residential uses. In the last draft that was done in the previous effort, these were all folded into one section, one article called Article 8, specific uses. I think that some of the subsections were eliminated, so I don't know if you and if Ray Stackhouse had looked at that.
Yeah, we did.
So, and if there are changes to those
Yeah,
sections?
there were.
Okay. All right. So we will incorporate those more recent changes and fold that into Article 8.
There's some things that this group, all of us, had worked through uses for Lincoln Highway with the 3 different sections.
Right.
But we're gonna need to kind of, I'm sure, go over them again. Probably need to do some tweaking with them.
Yeah.
Right. So going back to the article she was just talking about, so the specific use regulations, when you get this, it's under tab 7. This reflects the existing language in your ordinance today with it shows red line and strikeout from what Ray Stackhouse and I went through again to suggest to the board. And you'll see I have comments in it. Like for the first one is residential cluster development. And I wrote in brackets, does the board still want to continue to allow this?
Mhm.
Question mark. So we never got to have you guys go through the edits and say, yes, we want this. No, we don't want this. Oh, I understand why you made this change.
Right.
But I think as far as, you know, the work being done, it's there. Now it's just really for discussion for the board and not just the board, now the whole task force really. And I don't think it's going to take that long,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Okay.
Highlighted.
Okay, Article 10 are the sign regulations. So we're not proposing, at least I'm not proposing, to rewrite all of the sign regulations. But they will need to be amended, at least where they refer to the different zoning districts and what signs are permitted in what district. Obviously, if we're adding new districts and we're changing zoning districts, then we'll have to update the signs to reflect that. All other articles would remain as they are in the currently adopted ordinance. And this is like the administrative regulations, and enforcement and so forth. Although I did post a little note here earlier, except possibly eliminating the PRD overlay. That's another overlay district that's in your ordinance that's not underneath the special overlay. It's its own overlay district. So
Do we remember where we landed on that? 'Cause we were talking about it.
I think you guys said you wanted to get rid of it.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Wants to limit Article.
My question back then, I don't
the
remember
board-
the answer to
does
this.
the board
So
want to eliminate
there's one PRD, correct?
That's
what
correct.
they're talking
Plan or, yeah. or-
How does that work with, so that would still operate under that?
So
Those
yeah, so the whole PRD legislation in the MPC basically says that once that plan is approved, it's a planned residential development plan, and it gets recorded, whatever's on that plan stands as far as the zoning and the subdivision land development regulations are all wrapped into one based on that recorded plan. And then there's a decision. So if you recall, we did a tentative plan decision and a final plan decision. So that's the governing regulations. You don't have to look in our ordinance now. You just look to the approved plan for my place and you look at the approved decision, which has all the conditions and everything.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter what you do the ordinance because those are the governing documents anyway.
Okay.
Excellent.
And the way the law reads is that once that planned residential development is recorded, that basically acts as the zoning and the saldo regulations for that development.
Okay.
So you're, just to clarify one point here, is that you have, I'm showing the existing zoning map right now. The R5 district is called the pre-existing planned residential community district. And there are
That's like Ingleside. And,
Parker,
yeah.
Green.
Mhm.
So there are 3 areas. So I'm assuming that these were developed as PRDs, correct?
I wasn't here when that happened. I just know when this ordinance went into place, the thought process was we want those subdivisions to be able to continue to be bound by the regulations that they were built under, as far as setbacks, impervious coverage, that kind of thing. So
Right. So
Nancy, I think
I
there's
would
only
think
one.
this would remain, but
I
then
think there's only one actual PRD in that, and that's Wedgwood, where your cursor was there. The first, I believe
Right
that's
there.
a PRD, but
Mhm.
I
know.
I
It's
don't
so old.
believe.
Yeah.
I know that the Ingleside is that was a court order, so I think that was a conditional use that they that was Ron Nagel, I believe, because that was built based on a court decision. And then the other green one, I'm not positive because that's Hidden Forest, I believe.
But again, the thought process for the R5 was that you have these subdivisions that were already built out. And if people want to come in and build an addition or put an accessory structure, build a swimming pool, it didn't make sense to have them comply with a different R area and bulk standard. It would make sense to go back to what the approved plan was for those particular lots. And I actually think it's a great idea. And I use that suggestion to other municipalities that deal with existing subdivisions that are already in place, because otherwise you're trying to mix apples with oranges. It doesn't always work.
right.
And you end up with a lot of variance applications because you're trying to apply new standards to old plans.
So this R5 district would remain. So we're not suggesting that we would eliminate this R5 district. But the township does have a PRD overlay district, and that overlay district,
Was specifically done for my place. They came in and petitioned the board because they wanted to build a different development in that location. So Lou Caligreco represented the applicant and they asked the board to add a PRD overlay with the specific regulations that are in there today. And that got approved through what we called Dwell Town, but it's now known as My Place.
okay.
So that's the history of that. That came in ever, beyond when the ordinance was first done in 2005. I'm not sure how long it was. So that's the true PRD that's built under that overlay district ordinance.
Okay, and that is up in this area because that PRD overlay is like a 3,000 foot radius from the interchange of 30 and 322
I believe it's right there.
here.
Yep, that's
Okay,
it.
so that's developed, right? That's the
Being
Well, it's
developed
in
as we
development.
speak. 200 townhomes, 200 apartments.
All
Yep.
right. And so, just to be clear, so now we are proposing to eliminate the PRD overlay district.
In the matrix I'm looking at, for R5, there's four, only four. There's Hidden Forest, there's Fairways, Village on Thorndale Green, and Wedgewood Estates phases 1, 2, and 3. You have this? If you don't, I don't know. I don't know
I
where
do
I
not.
got it. So, I think I
Probably from the R5
Yeah.
ordinance. It's
Yeah,
probably
that's
from
what
an
it is.
R5.
Yeah.
Okay.
I downloaded so much stuff.
I know.
It's-
All right, so we can come back up to some of these items. If you'll allow me, I'll just go continue through the agenda items
Mhm.
here and continue with the overview of the project and the process. So, once we get through all of this, all of these ordinance amendments, updates, changes, edits, we'll go through the review and adoption process. So we'll create a draft of the entire document. We have proposed 14 task force meetings to get through this material and
Mhm.
get a draft together. And then there would be a planning commission public meeting, and the community would have opportunity to provide feedback to the planning commission at that point. Chester County Planning Commission will review the draft.
Mhm.
They'll review it for consistency with the VPP grant and also with consistency with the municipality's planning code. And then the Board of Commissioners will have a public hearing to consider adopting the new ordinance. We have projected a timeline of 18 months, including the adoption process. The adoption process is usually takes 2 to 3 months because we have to allow time for, according to the municipality's planning code, time for the county review. And so we're projecting 18 months for the entire project from tonight until adoption. So project logistics task force meetings are the third Thursdays of every month at 6:30 p.m. here at the Township Building. I plan to be here in person for all of those meetings. And I will send by email to the township. Typically, I'll send it to the township manager. An agenda and the materials for review. I send it about a week ahead of time. And then Don can distribute it to the task force members. And hopefully that will give you time to review the material and come to the meeting with questions, comments, and ideas. And that's it for the project overview, timeline, logistics.
Back up to ordinance updates.
Mm-hmm.
At the very top, I'm pretty sure we had all agreed we were gonna fold, industrial 1 and 2 into 1 industrial. Am I right? Anyone else have that note anywhere?
What's that?
I do recall,
I remember that too.
Okay.
wasn't much of a difference.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Hey, how are you, man? And then, we weren't making any changes with
Never angel.
C1 and C2, were we? Or was that
Well,
being
I think,
affected because of Lincoln Highway?
yeah,
Right.
so I was looking at, well, so I just got, Mark, you just gave me this map of Lincoln Highway
Arrow
1
did
and
this,
2 and Thorndale
And we
Village.
had it at one point,
What is this?
so it's just showing the Lincoln Highway breakout.
Oh, the three.
Yeah.
Three
Design
sections.
guidelines.
And the golf course. So,
So what I can do is I can take your existing zoning map and overlay this
oh, cool.
for next time.
Excellent.
Overlay the map. Mark gave me a map that shows proposed Lincoln Highway East, Lincoln Highway West, and Thorndale Village boundaries, and then also the commercial entertainment district boundary. So I can overlay that on your existing zoning map, and we'll see what it looks like. I think that much of the C1 district here, I can zoom in here a bit. The C1 district is in this light pink color. I think much of that will be, would now be the Lincoln Highway West district.
Right.
And then you have a little bit of C1 on this eastern end of Lincoln Highway, which would become the Lincoln Highway East district. So I think the C1 is going to end up going away.
Exactly. I knew that there was something about it. I just couldn't remember.
Oh, that was the only spot for C1?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's where Jamie is.
Yeah. So it's the light pink. And then you have the C2.
He's all
Yeah.
it's to the west. Yeah. See the C1 all the way to the left. To
So
the
there's
west there.
C1 all the way here on the west side of Lincoln Highway, and then there's a small piece of C1. It's a few parcels on the east end of Lincoln Highway. So those two areas will be replaced by Lincoln Highway West District and Lincoln Highway East District.
And again,
So C1.
I know we spent a lot of time on that, but we would appreciate maybe your input on whether that's the right way to go,
Mhm.
because you're obviously being a planner. So, if you have suggestions on that, definitely open to that.
Okay.
At least I am. I know we spent a lot of time on it, but,
Mhm.
if you feel strongly that we shouldn't be doing that, then,
Mhm.
let us know.
Absolutely.
I'll take a look at a closer look at what you have written for it so far, and compare it to the C1 and make sure everything is good.
I don't
Question
think,
answered.
did we spend a lot of time on C2, Kristen? I didn't think so. We never got to that point. So C2, we didn't really spend any time on.
Okay.
And on that map too, is Thorndale Village a little shorter? And
I think it's
the east and
long.
west is a little bit longer,
I think
just on the east side?
Was it from Cohen to?
no, it's from
Thorndale
Wedgwood
Village,
exit.
on this map, it looks like
The western exit of Wedgwood.
it ends here, right where the Z of Zinn Road is. Let me zoom in. Where am I?
Here's Zen Road.
It looks like Thorndale Village District, that's drawn on the map that Mark gave me. The western boundary is here.
That's where Lomax is?
That's like
Buchanan?
CVS.
Yeah. It's at the train station.
Okay.
And then west of that starts the Lincoln Highway West District. So this would all become Lincoln Highway West. And Thorndale Village District runs from here to right about here.
Oh, the beginning section of Wedgewood
The,
over by
From the west, yes.
Wiggins.
mm-hmm.
The Wiggins
Yeah.
store.
And then Lincoln Highway East would be this large purple parcel all out to the end of the township, the eastern end of the
Mhm.
township.
That large parcel is it car dealership?
No, that's Wedgewood
That's
Shopping Center.
Wedgewood Shopping
Oh, that's a shopping
Center.
center. Okay. And the car dealership is a little
The pink
rectangle
one.
to the right.
Yep.
That will one day be our restaurant row.
There was a question about whether the rail transportation corridor should be included in that particular zone where we're replacing C1.
So let me go to, now this is a map. This was the latest map from the previous effort, which shows the rail transportation corridor as it was proposed as of, I think, September of 2022. And it is this purple district, which follows the rail line.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, are those actual parcels though? Like, there's parcels within that?
It is there, it's almost one long parcel.
Okay.
It's the rail line corridor right
But
of
it's owned
way.
by Amtrak, it's like,
I think it's National Rail Corp.
yeah, it's national.
Rail Corp.
Yeah,
And there's there are parcels between that and Lincoln Highway, I believe.
right. Yeah, so
That
I
don't
can
show
zoom
in this
more.
color here. I think.
Yeah, so if I zoom, so let's start on the eastern end. So from the eastern end of the township, I don't know that you can see on the screen, but there are some,
Yeah.
I'm zooming way in. So some of the rail corridor there are parcel lines, but these are all owned by the rail company.
Okay.
Mhm.
Splitting parcels.
No, it's not splitting any parcels.
I think
But-
it's a great idea. I mean,
This is Lincoln Highway, and so this is where Mark is referring to. There are parcels on the south side of Lincoln Highway that are between the highway and the rail corridor.
and just with Nancy has this background, and I'm sorry if you already have it. The Lincoln Highway Overlay District was developed as an overlay because of parcels like that where people couldn't basically do anything. If they had to comply with the underlying zoning, the area and bulk requirements were impossible. They kept having to get variances. So the board wanted a mechanism to build flexibility in for parcels that they wanted to see be redeveloped, but couldn't be done under the underlying zoning. So I think the board's thought was just put that in underlying zoning. You don't need an overlay.
I think that when we adopted it, it was the quickest way to get it done and get something, into function. So
And unlike the Route 30 bypass, where I'm not familiar with any applications that have come in, you've had a lot of applications come in under that Lincoln Highway overlay where you've given modifications and flexibility that has encouraged redevelopment. So I think it's important to definitely keep those standards.
Got it. And then on this western end, again, it hugs Lincoln Highway for the most part. And then on the western end, there are a few kind of slivers of parcels. I shouldn't say slivers. These are entire parcels on the southern end of the highway. And then it continues out to the western end of the township. So yes, I think that this would remain if the township would like to do so, then this rail transportation corridor could remain as a district. And I think the idea here was that there is the county trail Chester Valley Trail that
Mhm.
is coming up into this area, and then it could possibly connect along the rail line through the township. So that was the idea behind that corridor. Right. So they're actually showing, I'm going to zoom way in here. On this map, I believe that this was zoned as industrial.
Originally, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you can see these light blue, they're sort of artifacts, little slivers of parcels that are artifacts of the industrial district. So. Okay.
Well, how is it proposed to be how is it proposed to be done?
We're gonna have to figure that out. I mean, right here, it's showing as industrial on this.
And that's just probably a
2022 map.
very small little parcel.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Wonder if when they built the road, it just got severed off from the. Okay, so when they put the road in, it just severed their property. Right.
I'll double check the ownership of this parcel here. I think that is the rail line. You see this one? You can see the faint gray line showing the parcel boundary.
There is one parcel there that was I-2
Right.
at Deer. Maybe it might be that one.
Here, I'll go to the current zoning map. I have the current zoning map here. So
Okay.
this is what.
Go.
I think the larger blue one, not the larger one, the one that's a rectangle, that is the one possibly that's like the roofing company now.
This one.
I believe. I think it's there. Yeah. That's what we created the whole I-2 for. Was there was a gentleman that couldn't sell his property and it was zoned, I think, residential. So we created the I-2 to make sure he could sell it because it was a commercial property. And we didn't want all of the things that are in I-1 being right up against a residential neighborhood, because that I-1 seems to be where all the things that you don't want get dumped. So, you know, that's why we created the I-2. Yes. Which actually, I mean, it probably is not a bad location for that type of use, you know, in that corner.
Hidden from the other side.
Yeah.
Coming down in the
Okay, well, I guess that's something that we should look at is whether these I-1 and I-2 parcels
Actually belong to anyone.
and whether they would get changed to the rail corridor. Like I said, I'll double check the ownership here.
He just said the big ones are the rail.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then there are these little. There's this and this.
And I think that the rectangle one is privately owned too.
This one, yeah. I mean, these little slivers could be incorporated into the rail corridor district. We could zone them as the rail corridor district.
I forget what we put in rail district, what's allowed in there. Is it just railways? Is that,
I think it was trails, rails and trails.
okay.
I don't know that anything else was in there.
I think the proposal, probably not the one parcel. the larger one.
Oops, sorry. Were you looking at that map?
Yeah, I forget how that was proposed. The large rectangle parcel there, how was that proposed in the last version?
Let's see. That is residential infill,
Okay,
so residential.
so we'll be back to a non-conforming use there.
There's a commercial use on there now.
I
Yeah,
believe so.
yeah.
So the rail transportation corridor said the district includes all land within railroad corridor owned by Amtrak. The southern fork at the east end is owned by Norfolk Southern, which has discontinued the line. It is proposed to accommodate the extension of the Chester Valley Trail, owned and maintained by Chester County. The Amtrak portion of this district includes the Thorndale Station and should accommodate the continued use and operation of passenger rail service. That's what was to
Okay.
describe it.
The rail station is here. Right. Okay.
Then we'll just have to figure out what to do with the little slivers of land, whether to
Yeah, and let's
lump them in or.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm flipping back and forth here. I'm just let me get it. So that changed. And then there's this little I2 here, which became a residential growth, the RD, residential development. This was one of the large undeveloped tracts that was identified in the last go round. And this piece here, which is currently zoned I2, was proposed to change to residential growth, residential development. So that's right there at Marshallton Road. So the rail corridor would come through here. And as far as the current zoning goes, this would be I2, this would be I2. So I think there's, you can think about whether you would want these two properties to remain I2 or to get folded into something else.
I don't think, I mean,
This is I1 right now. This
Yeah.
is
Isn't
I1.
that the Geo Carlson
It is.
property?
Yes.
at the I2 there, north of your cursor there, that it's been developed as a storage unit place. So
Yeah.
if it became non-conforming, I don't really see much issue there, because it would. I don't see it changing much.
I just worry that you don't have a lot of industrial zone properties. So from
Yeah.
I know fair share is usually applied more to residential.
Yeah.
You have very little I district, and I think to the extent you can keep what you have zoned I, you should.
Okay.
That's,
Yeah,
from
I
a
would-
lawyer standpoint, that's my recommendation.
I was thinking that too. That was exactly what I was just thinking, because if you eliminate these I parcels here, the I1 and the I2 here,
Mhm.
so these are going to be eliminated and turned into the rail corridor. I don't know that you want to eliminate much more of your industrial district. I'm just zooming out to see where you have it. Here, 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 here.
Yes,
Yeah.
Parkside, that somebody just submitted an application. They're gonna submit something, they want you to do a townhouse development. So Mr. Khan had come in
Yes.
with the
yes.
Cohen, he had
Mhm.
made a presentation to you. He wrote a letter to us asking where this process stood and how long it was gonna take, and if not, they were gonna submit a petition. So they're gonna come and ask you to rezone it. So,
That
was,
would drop another I
bless
district.
you.
yeah. I'm sure the neighbors would much rather have townhomes than industrial over there. This is what they were proposing.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
And
Kristen, just a question, could the rail line be considered industrial, or is that,
Yeah,
Like
except
if
that
you-
you should have some available land to, I mean, that's not gonna
For
go away.
industrial,
So that's
yeah.
always gonna be zoned yeah, I think somebody could say, that's not really, even though you call it industrial by name, it's not really
an industrial?
available for industrial purposes.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So I'll take the Lincoln Highway, Thorndale Village, and I'll add the rail line, the rail corridor district as it's proposed. I'll overlay them on this existing zoning map, and we'll see what that looks like and what's kind of left around it. And that'll give us a starting point as far as what the zoning map would look like, and that would be a good starting point. If the C district goes, the C1 district, if that goes away, then your commercial areas, aside from what commercial uses, you would certainly have commercial uses permitted within Lincoln Highway East and West and the Thorndale Village. And then you would still have this we wouldn't call it C2 anymore because there would be no C1. So we'll maybe call this highway commercial. And these would be your kind of larger scale commercial uses
Mhm.
in your C2 district. So I think that's okay. All right. So the C1 would go away. The C2 remains, and maybe we call it something else, like highway commercial, or if anybody can come up with a clever name.
Interchange
C1
commercial?
Commercial.
Could call it C1, although that implies there's a C2, right?
Oh,
But
is
we'll
it?
How about
C,
northern?
commercial.
C.
How about northern commercial?
That's good.
So
Something
C1's
different.
gonna drop, C2, and then I1 and I2 are getting combined, we
Mhm.
think, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then we'll have the others added in. Just going through to see if there are any other questions, comments on any of this material here.
I have one question, and this might be more for the township. We're looking at all these things as grids on maps. Especially when we reach the point where we're starting to dig into Lincoln Highway and the uses. It would be really great if we could have drone footage of east to the end of west, so that we can actually see what's there. You know, part of zoning is trying to direct how you're going to grow, where. So by having that vision to have a real plan, rather than just looking at a map and lines, would be great, I think. Love it.
Cool. Would that be something the university would ever have as part of a? Yeah, so I think.
I got another one.
And we have such a great, they have such a great planning department at Westchester University. I don't know if that's what you were talking about, but I know that there might be programs there for grad students to take on as a master's project or something.
Of course, so we probably need this in the next 90 days. So,
Prime time for before school ends.
yeah.
It's worth
yeah.
asking.
I don't know who we would ask, but
Nancy has some
no, I'm
friends,
I'm
right?
joking because
Yeah.
Adam's teaching for the
Yeah.
planning
Yeah,
department.
yeah.
So
Right.
My other question again is not so much for Nancy. Bless you.
Yeah.
God bless.
I know that there's, a couple of members of the board who had a lot of personal issues going on during a big chunk of this when we were sitting here together reviewing things. And I know I've heard Adam say before about, look at him like, what? About the importance of everyone understanding zone. And I was wondering if Adam could just give a little top line down so everyone makes sure they understand what we're talking about.
I like putting you on the spot there, Adam.
No.
Okay.
No. But maybe before the next zoning,
just a
maybe
dissertation, Adam.
still, I don't want anyone here to think that they're not included. And,
There's probably there's no such thing as zoning because nothing is the same. Zoning changes by
Change.
day. There's always a court decision coming out. So, the best of them stay up to date. The problem is that the rest of us are playing catch up. And then, unfortunately, everybody outside of this room, everything that they know about zoning, they've either seen on a movie or it's in their website.
Is it on now? Thanks, Cheryl.
So I think the zoning explanation would be great, not only as a refresher for people here, but I think when it comes time for public input and what we're trying to explain, I think for people outside of this room, it would be great. And we could probably just put together either a PowerPoint presentation or some sort of, infograph or something that can go on the website so that people can look at it, because there's a lot of misperceptions about what you can and can't do with zoning. And all of a sudden the idea of we're not going to allow something, and then that idea becomes a taking. And now we suddenly have to go out and spend a lot of money to pay because we've removed somebody's rights under that bundle of rights for property ownership. So I think maybe some basics out to the public, either on the website and then, even talking points might be something that helps us not only here, but the rest of the citizens to understand exactly what this process is and why it's so important. Because there are a multiple of factors that are coming together here. We're talking about changing zoning, and Kristen had talked about fair share. While that's mainly residential, the last thing we'd want is a court decision coming down saying, hey, you now have to put this unwanted land use right on Route 30. That's not what we want. So, I can put something together. Run it through Kristen to make sure we're legal.
All right. Any other questions? Comments?
I'm excited, really excited.
Good, so am I.
Yeah, he's
I'm looking
vibrating
forward
up
to
there.
it.
I just want
I really am.
like a
It's-
kid in a candy store. He's excited.
No, about, midway through the earlier process, I made the decision to really immerse myself in trying to understand this whole process and what's what and what we have here and how it's being used. I can't wait. So,
Quick, the one thing I would do, and it won't take long, is read Article 6 of the MPC, read Article 9 of the MPC. That really is, because that's the boundaries within which you have to work. That is the enabling legislation that allows a municipality to create zoning ordinance. It tells you what you can do and what you should do and what you must do. So it's really not that long to read, and I think that'd be helpful for everybody to understand that that's the starting framework.
Just don't read it right before you're going to bed, or you
Yeah.
Nightmares.
you won't. Don't read it in bed, or you won't make it through.
Unless you're having
Right.
sleep problems,
Yeah.
yes. Alicia, I
You
want
have
you to read
insomnia,
this.
just pull out the zoning
You
book.
sleep in a minute. No, that is good advice. Read the MPC.
Just those two sections.
Just those two sections. Yeah.
6 and 9.
So, okay, so I think we have a good starting point here. At least I am more clear as to what you want at this point. So I will come back with a map. As I said, that would show your existing districts, and then I'll overlay the new proposed districts on that, and we'll see what things look like. And then, as I see it, we'll kind of walk through each of these things one by one and start picking them off. I think tonight we've already accomplished a few things, and that is we know that we're going to eliminate the PRD overlay. At least we're going to propose to do that, and add those districts on. And I think we'll have to look more closely at how that impacts the industrial districts and make some decisions about that. And Kristen is going to get her binder to us. All right. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. I think
Thank you.
I just want to thank the county because I know this was not easy. We put a lot of people have put a lot of effort into allowing this process to go forward. So,
Yeah.
thank you to the county planners for doing that.
Shot.
all right.
Nancy.
Yes.
Oh
Yes,
my
Nancy,
God,
thank you.
For inviting me back. I do
Sure.
appreciate that.
This is
I'm
the-
flattered.
It's the
I
perfect
really am.
scenario. It really
am
is.
flattered.
So,
And thank you to the Zoom audience.
Yes.
thank you.
I'm going to close this out now. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Oops, sorry.